The hotel lobby looked calm from the outside, but inside it was always moving. People came and went all day, rolling suitcases across the shiny floor, speaking in low voices, checking phones and waiting for rides. Soft lights hung from the high ceiling, making everything look warm and expensive. In one corner of the lobby stood a grand piano. It was black, polished and beautiful, but most of the time it was only there for show. Guests passed by it every day without stopping, as if it were just another piece of furniture. The concierge stood near the front desk, doing her job as she always did. She wore a neat uniform and kept her posture straight. Her face was calm, almost unreadable, but her eyes noticed everything. She greeted guests politely, answered questions, and helped solve small problems. Many people thanked her quickly and walked away. Some barely looked at her at all. To most guests, she was just part of the hotel, like the walls or the elevators. She had worked there for several years. The job paid the bills and kept life stable. Every morning, she arrived early, tied her hair back, and reminded herself to stay professional no matter how people treated her. Some guests were kind. Others were impatient or rude. She had learned not to take it personally. People with money often forgot how to speak gently. That afternoon, the lobby felt a little different. There was a quiet buzz in the air, the kind that came when an important guest was expected. Staff members moved faster than usual. The manager checked the desk again and again. A luxury car soon stopped outside the main entrance, and a man stepped out. His clothes were perfectly fitted. His watch shined under the light. He walked with confidence, the kind that comes from always being in control. As soon as he entered, attention followed him. Some guests glanced up from their phones. Staff members straightened their backs. Everyone knew this kind of person. He was wealthy, powerful, and used to being admired. He smiled slightly as he walked in, as if the world around him existed to welcome him. The concierge watched quietly as he approached the desk. She greeted him politely and asked how she could help. He gave his name, expecting it to be recognized. It was. The staff reacted quickly, offering assistance, confirming his reservation, and welcoming him warmly. He enjoyed the attention, nodding as if it were only natural. While waiting, his eyes wandered around the lobby. They paused on the piano. He raised an eyebrow and let out a small laugh. "Interesting decoration," he said aloud, not really speaking to anyone in particular. "Does anyone actually play that thing?" The concierge followed his gaze. For a brief moment, something changed in her expression. It was very slight, almost impossible to notice. "Sometimes," she replied softly. "It's there for guests to enjoy." He looked at her, surprised that she had answered. His eyes moved from her face to her uniform and back again. Playful, mocking smile appeared. "You play?" he asked, his tone light but clearly doubtful. She hesitated, not because she was ashamed, but because this was not a question she usually answered honestly. "I know how," she said simply. A short laugh escaped him. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. A few nearby guests turned their heads, sensing entertainment. "That's hard to believe," he said. "That piano looks expensive. Not exactly for beginners." The concierge felt the familiar weight of being judged. She had felt it many times before in many places. Still, she kept her voice steady. "It is a fine instrument," she said. "It deserves respect." Her words made him laugh again. "Respect," he repeated. "All right." He leaned slightly closer to the desk, lowering his voice as if sharing a joke. "If you can play that piano well," he said, "I'll marry you." A few people nearby laughed out loud. Others smiled awkwardly. It sounded like a joke, and everyone knew it was meant to be one. The kind of joke people with power make when they feel untouchable. The concierge did not laugh. She felt heat rise in her chest. Not anger, but something deeper. A memory stirred quietly inside her, one she usually kept locked away. She looked at the piano again. The smooth surface reflected the lights above. For a second, the noise of the lobby faded. She thought of a much smaller room from years ago. A room with plain walls, a worn bench, and a piano that had seen better days. She remembered long hours of practice, fingers sore, back straight, heart full of hope. She remembered applause that once felt possible again and again. Life had not gone the way she planned. Family responsibilities came first. Money was needed. Dreams were slowly folded away, not thrown out, just placed somewhere safe. Music stayed with her quietly, like a secret friend. The millionaire watched her silence with amusement. He assumed she was embarrassed. He straightened up, satisfied with his joke, and turned slightly away, already losing interest. But she spoke. "All right," she said. The word was calm, almost gentle, but it stopped him. He turned back. "All right?" he repeated. "I'll play," she said. The laughter around them faded. People looked at each other, unsure if this was real. Someone nearby whispered, "Is she serious?" The concierge stepped away from the desk. Her heart beat faster, but her steps were steady. She walked toward the piano, each step bringing her closer to something she had not touched in years. She placed her hand lightly on the edge of the instrument. The surface was cool and smooth. The lobby grew quiet. Phones were lowered. Conversations stopped. Even the millionaire watched now, curiosity replacing his smile. She sat down on the bench and took a slow breath. Her fingers hovered above the keys. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. But then memory took over. Her hands remembered what her mind feared. She pressed the first key. The sound filled the lobby, clear and strong. Heads turned fully now. Another note followed, then another. The music began to flow, gentle at first, like a calm voice, then deeper, richer, carrying emotion with it. People froze where they stood. The concierge was no longer just a hotel employee in uniform. She was something else entirely. The piano was no longer decoration. It was alive. The millionaire felt his confidence shift. His arms dropped to his sides. His smile disappeared. And as the music continued, everyone in the lobby realized this moment was about to become something they would never forget. The sound of the piano spread through the lobby like a slow wave. At first, it surprised people. Then it held them still. The notes were clear and steady, not rushed, not shaky. Each key seemed pressed with purpose, as if the music knew exactly where it wanted to go. Guests who were walking stopped mid-step. A couple near the entrance turned around fully. Someone at the desk forgot what they were saying and just listened. Even the staff, trained to stay focused, found their eyes drifting toward the piano. The concierge sat straight on the bench. Her shoulders were relaxed, and her hands moved smoothly across the keys. She did not look at the crowd. Her eyes rested softly on the piano, as if she were alone in the room. Years of silence did not matter anymore. The music was still there, waiting, just as she had left it. The millionaire stood a few steps back, frozen in place. At first, he thought it was a trick. Maybe she knew one simple piece. Maybe it would stop any second. But it didn't. The melody grew deeper, fuller. It carried emotion that could not be practiced or faked. His face changed. The playful confidence drained away, replaced by confusion. He had made the comment as a joke, never expecting this. He glanced around and saw the expressions on other people's faces. They were not laughing. They were listening. The music shifted, becoming softer, almost gentle. It sounded like a memory, something warm and familiar. A few people felt their throats tighten without knowing why. One guest slowly lowered their phone, forgetting to record. Another wiped their eyes quietly. For the concierge, the lobby no longer existed. In her mind, she was back in smaller rooms, playing late into the night. She remembered practicing when the world felt heavy, when music was the only place she could breathe freely. Each note carried pieces of her life, her sacrifices, her patience. The piano responded to her touch like an old friend. It did not resist. It did not feel cold. It welcomed her. As the final notes of the piece approached, the room felt tense, as if everyone was holding the same breath. The music slowed, then gently came to rest. Her hands lifted from the keys. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then applause broke out. It started with one person, then another until the entire lobby filled with clapping. It was not polite applause. It was loud, honest, and full of surprise. Some people stood. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The concierge remained seated for a second longer, gathering herself. Then she stood and turned slightly toward the crowd. Her face showed no pride, only calm. The millionaire clapped too, though his hands felt heavy. He stopped before others did. The words he had spoken earlier echoed in his mind. They no longer felt funny. They felt careless. People whispered around him. "I didn't expect that. She's incredible. Why is she working here?" The concierge walked back toward the desk. The staff looked at her differently now. With curiosity. With respect. One of them smiled wide, as if seeing her for the first time. The millionaire cleared his throat and stepped forward. "I didn't know," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "That was impressive." She nodded slightly. "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "You could be performing on a stage." She met his eyes. "Life doesn't always go the way we plan." Her words were simple, but they struck him harder than the music. He felt exposed. He had always believed talent and success were visible things. If someone was gifted, they would be known, seen, celebrated. He had never considered how much could remain hidden. Other guests slowly returned to their routines, but the feeling in the lobby did not fade. Something had changed. Conversations sounded softer. Movements felt slower, more thoughtful. Later that evening, as the concierge finished her shift, a guest approached her quietly. "You should never stop playing," they said. She smiled politely. "Thank you." Another guest left a note at the desk with a short message of encouragement. A third asked if she would play again sometime. She went home that night feeling tired in a new way. Not drained, but full. Memories returned that she had pushed down for years. She sat alone in her small apartment and placed her hands on the table, imagining the keys beneath her fingers. Across the city, the millionaire sat in his hotel room, unable to focus. The image of the concierge at the piano replayed in his mind. He felt something unfamiliar, regret. Not because of the joke itself, but because of what it revealed about him. He had spent his life believing he could judge people quickly. That day proved him wrong. The next morning, he returned to the lobby earlier than planned. The piano stood quietly in its corner again. The concierge was already at her post, greeting guests as usual. He watched her for a moment before speaking. "Good morning," he said, more carefully this time. "Good morning," she replied. He glanced at the piano. "Would you play again today?" She paused, then nodded slowly. "If time allows." As he walked away, he realized something had shifted inside him. What began as a joke had turned into a lesson he did not expect. And for the concierge, a door long closed had begun to open once more. The days after the piano moment moved forward, but they did not feel the same. The lobby still looked elegant. The lights still glowed softly, and guests still came and went. Yet something unseen had changed. People noticed the piano now. Some slowed their steps when they passed it. Others glanced at the concierge with curiosity, as if wondering what stories she carried behind her calm face. She returned to her routine, greeting guests and answering questions. She did her job the same way she always had, with care and patience. But inside, her thoughts were louder. Music kept returning to her mind, like a quiet voice asking to be heard again. One afternoon, during a short break, she stood near the piano alone. She did not sit down. She simply rested her hand on the smooth surface. Felt familiar, comforting. She smiled softly, then stepped away before anyone noticed. The millionaire also changed. He still walked with confidence, but it no longer felt careless. He watched more. He listened more. He found himself noticing the people around him, especially those who usually blended into the background. He realized how easily he had overlooked someone with real depth. He began asking questions. Not loud questions meant to show power, but quiet ones. He asked staff members about the hotel's history, about the piano, about events held there in the past. Each answer added to his growing curiosity. One evening, he approached the concierge again. This time, there was no joke in his voice. "Did you study music?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "A long time ago. Why did you stop?" She thought for a moment. "Life needed other things from me." He did not push further. Her answer felt complete. He respected that. That night, he sat alone in the lobby long after dinner. The piano remained silent. He imagined how the space had filled with sound before, how it had changed the mood of everyone present. He wondered how many talents were hidden around him, unnoticed because of titles and clothes. Meanwhile, the concierge received messages from family members who had seen short clips shared online. Some videos had spread quietly. Not viral fame, but enough to reach people who knew her before her life changed. One message stood out. It was simple. "I always knew you still had it." She stared at the words for a long time. They warmed her chest, but they also made her nervous. Talent was not something she feared. Hope was. The next day, a small crowd gathered earlier than usual. Word had spread among guests that the concierge might play again. She noticed the glances, the hopeful looks. Pressure crept in. When someone asked politely if she would play, she said, "Maybe later." She needed time, not to practice but to decide. That evening she walked home slowly. The city felt loud, but her mind felt quiet. She passed a music shop she had avoided for years. Without thinking too much, she stepped inside. The smell of wood and polish wrapped around her. Instruments lined the walls. The piano stood in the corner. She sat down carefully and pressed a key. The sound was warm. She played softly just for herself. No audience. No expectations. Tears surprised her, but she did not stop. She realized then how much she had missed this part of herself. Back at the hotel the next morning, she felt lighter. When the millionaire greeted her, she smiled first. Later that day, she sat at the piano again. This time, she did not wait for permission. She played during a quiet hour, letting the music fill the space gently. Guests listened. Some stayed longer than planned. Others returned later, hoping to hear more. The millionaire stood nearby, watching without interrupting. He understood now that the music did not belong to him or to anyone else. It belonged to her. When she finished, he approached slowly. "You should share this," he said. "Not just here." She looked at him thoughtfully. "I'm not sure where to begin." "I might know someone," he said carefully. "Only if you want." She did not answer right away. The idea felt heavy but also exciting. That night, she wrote down a list of things she had once dreamed of doing. It was short, but meaningful. At the top was one simple line: "Play again." The story was no longer about a joke or a challenge. It was about choice. And for the first time in years, she felt ready to choose herself. The days that followed felt fuller, as if time itself had slowed just enough for important things to happen. The concierge continued her work, but music now had a place in her daily rhythm. She played during quiet hours, never loudly, never to show off. She played to breathe. Guests began to expect it. Some adjusted their schedules so they could sit in the lobby longer. A few brought coffee and listened from a distance. The piano no longer felt like decoration. It felt like a living part of the hotel. The hotel manager noticed the change too. At first, there was concern about professionalism. But after seeing how guests responded, how calm and welcoming the space felt, permission was quietly given. "As long as the work comes first," the manager said. She nodded, grateful. One afternoon, a woman approached her after a short performance. She spoke gently and handed over a card. "I help organize small music events," she said. "Nothing big, just honest spaces for real talent." The concierge held the card carefully. Her heart raced, but her voice stayed calm. "Thank you," she said. That evening, she sat at home with the card on the table. She turned it over again and again. Opportunity felt exciting, but also frightening. Saying yes meant stepping forward. Saying no meant staying safe. She thought about the younger version of herself, the one who believed music could open doors. She also thought about the years she spent being practical, responsible, quiet. The next morning, she sent a short message. Just one line. I would like to talk. Meanwhile, the millionaire watched all of this from a distance. He did not push. He did not interfere. He understood now that support did not mean control. Still, he used his connections quietly, asking questions, opening paths without forcing them. A small performance was arranged. Nothing grand. Just a local space, a simple piano, and a few invited listeners. The concierge almost said no when she heard the details. Her hands shook that night. Doubt crept in. What if she failed? She practiced quietly at home using a borrowed keyboard. Her fingers remembered more than she expected. Mistakes happened, but she kept going. Each note built confidence. The day of the performance arrived faster than she wanted. The room was modest, with soft lighting and chairs set close together. No spotlight, no stage, just a piano. She sat down and took a breath. The audience waited, respectful and still. She began to play. The music filled the room, raw and honest. There was no pressure to impress, only truth. She felt present, alive. When she finished, the applause felt warm, not overwhelming. Several people came to speak with her. One asked if she taught. Another asked if she would play again. She returned home that night feeling proud, not because of praise, but because she had shown up. Back at the hotel, word spread. Guests congratulated her quietly. The piano became a place of stories. The millionaire approached her one last time before checking out. You didn't need my words to prove anything, he said. But I'm glad I heard you play. She smiled. So am I. As he left, she realized something important. This journey was no longer about being seen by others. It was about seeing herself. And that made all the difference. Life began to move faster, but it no longer felt heavy. The concierge balanced her days between work at the hotel and small moments of music that now appeared naturally. She still greeted guests with the same calm voice, still helped with directions and luggage, but there was a quiet confidence in her steps that had not been there before. More invitations came, slowly at first. A short performance at a local cafe. A small gathering at a community hall. Nothing glamorous, nothing loud. Just rooms filled with people who wanted to listen. Each time she said yes, her fear grew smaller. She learned to manage her time carefully. Some mornings were early. Some nights were long. There were moments when she felt tired, when doubt tried to return. But the music gave back more than it took. It reminded her who she was. At the hotel, guests began asking about her schedule. Some planned their stays around the times she played in the lobby. Others left notes at the desk thanking her for the calm she brought to their busy days. The piano became a place of comfort. One afternoon, a guest approached her quietly. Your music helped me today, they said. I didn't know I needed it. She smiled, touched by the honesty. I'm glad, she replied. Behind the scenes, the millionaire kept his distance, but he watched with respect. He realized this story was no longer his to influence. His role had ended the moment she chose herself. That understanding humbled him more than the music ever could. A larger opportunity soon appeared. It was still modest, but it carried weight. A small recorded session. Nothing fancy. Just her and a piano in a quiet space. The idea of being recorded scared her more than playing live. A recording felt permanent. Mistakes would stay. She almost declined. That night, she sat by her window, listening to the city sounds below. She thought about all the times she had waited for the perfect moment. She realized something important. Perfect moments rarely arrive. They are chosen. She accepted. The recording day was simple. The room was plain. The piano was tuned. There were no bright lights, no crowd. Just a quiet request to begin when ready. She closed her eyes and played. The music flowed freely, without fear. Each note felt honest. When it ended, the room stayed silent for a second. Then someone whispered, "That's enough." It was. Days later, messages arrived. Not praise, not promises. Just interest, curiosity, invitations to talk. Her life did not change overnight. She still worked at the hotel. She still lived in the same place. But inside, something steady had formed. She was no longer waiting to be discovered. She was walking forward. The lobby piano continued to play a role in her journey. One evening, as she finished a piece, she noticed the millionaire standing near the entrance, preparing to leave the city. He listened quietly until the final note. He approached slowly. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. "For what?" "For reminding me that talent doesn't need permission," he replied. She smiled softly. "Neither does kindness." He laughed quietly, not offended, but understanding. They parted without ceremony. Later that night, as she locked her apartment door, she felt something close to peace. The path ahead was still unclear. There were no guarantees, but fear no longer controlled her choices. She placed her hands on the table again, imagining the keys. This time, the future felt open. The story that began as a careless joke was now something else entirely. It had become a reminder that quiet strength can change a life. And she was ready for whatever came next. The final weeks of that season arrived quietly. Nothing dramatic happened overnight, yet everything felt complete. The concierge continued working at the hotel, but her days now carried a sense of purpose she had never known before. She no longer felt like someone passing time. She felt present in her own life. Music was no longer something she fit into empty corners of the day. It had become part of her routine again, like breathing. Some mornings she practiced before work. Some evenings she played just for herself, with no audience and no plan. The hotel lobby still welcomed travelers from all over the world. People still rushed in and out, but many paused when they heard the piano. Some listened for a few seconds. Others stayed longer. A few closed their eyes, letting the sound slow their thoughts. She noticed these small reactions and understood their meaning. Music did not need applause to matter. Sometimes it only needed to be felt. One afternoon, the hotel hosted a private event. Nothing loud, nothing public. Just a gathering of people who appreciated calm spaces. She was asked to play softly in the background. Not as entertainment, but as atmosphere. She agreed. As she played, she watched people relax. Conversations softened. Smiles appeared where stress had lived before. In that moment, she realized something important. Success was not always a stage or a spotlight. Sometimes it was creating peace in a noisy world. After the event, the hotel manager thanked her personally. "You've changed the feeling of this place," they said. She smiled. "I only played what was already inside." Outside the hotel, her life continued to grow slowly. She accepted performances that felt right and declined ones that did not. She learned to listen to her instincts. She was no longer chasing approval. She was choosing balance. The small recording she had done earlier found its way to more ears. Not millions, just enough. Enough to open doors without overwhelming her. Enough to remind her that her voice mattered. One evening, she received a message from someone who had heard her play months ago in the lobby. "I finally bought a piano," the message said. "I forgot how much music mattered to me." She stared at the words for a long time. They meant more than praise ever could. The piano in the hotel remained where it always had been. Same place, same shine. But it was no longer silent decoration. It had become a witness to change. She often thought back to the day everything shifted. The careless comment, the laughter, the challenge that was never meant to be real. What surprised her most was not that she proved others wrong. It was that she proved something to herself. She learned that talent does not disappear when life becomes hard. It waits, it listens, and when given space, it returns stronger. The millionaire never returned to the hotel, but his presence no longer mattered. The story had moved beyond him. What remained was growth, humility, and respect. On a quiet night near the end of her shift, she sat at the piano once more. The lobby was nearly empty. The lights were dim. She played slowly, letting the sound settle into the space. There was no audience, and yet it felt like the most important performance of all. When she finished, she closed the piano gently and stood up. She felt calm, whole. As she walked home under the city lights, she understood that her life was not divided into before and after anymore. It was simply moving forward. The story that began with doubt ended with clarity. And somewhere between those first notes and the last, she found herself again.